This podcast is intended for a mature audience over 19 years of age and is provided on an educational and informational basis. Any material presented is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as a substitute for professional medical advice or as an endorsement or medical claim by Everything Podcast or Ripco.pro.
Ross Rebagliati.
Ross is looking good right now.
He's not holding back.
Left to go. He's fighting it right now for all it's worth. It's carve or starve for Ross right now.
He's in first place.
Ross Rebagliati, Canada.
72 hours after Ross's gold medal run.
Ross Rebagliati has tested positive for passive marijuana.
Forced to forfeit his gold medal.
Returned the medal and diploma awarded to the athlete Rebagliati.
They'd put me in jail in Japan.
Overturned. He did get the medal back.
I just wanted to take the control back again. Let's turn this mess into a success. I'd love if we could be part of normalizing cannabis use and to also stand up for the people who use cannabis. It's personal. I'm Ross Rebagliati, and this is the Potcast.
Welcome to the Potcast with Ross Rebagliati, where we explore the world of cannabis through the eyes of one of the world's premier cannabis advocates.
I've been at the forefront of cannabis awareness for over 25 years, since that fateful day in Nagano. Join me as we dig deep for gold nuggets hidden in the wide world of weed. It's growers, producers, innovators, and enthusiasts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and keep the podcast in your rotation.
On this episode of the Potcast, we're relieving Ross of his hosting duties to put him in the hot seat. We all know Ross's epic story of becoming the first to win an Olympic gold medal in snowboarding.
Ross Rebagliati, Canada.
Only to have it revoked after he tested positive for cannabis. You might even remember his high-profile press tour and the celebrity hobnobbing that ensued after his medal was reinstated.
Please welcome Ross Rebagliati.
Within 24 hours, I was in Burbank, California, doing The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. It was just like a gong show of me becoming a celebrity and hanging out with celebrities and flying around in private jets to Aspen and smoking weed with the Rolling Stones backstage before their concerts and just doing unbelievable things.
Ross's Olympic story is pretty unbelievable, and you might think all this attention would lead him to even greater success. Was Ross able to parlay his celebrity status into a lucrative career in cannabis? We're about to find out as we dive into Ross's current life as a cannabis entrepreneur. Plus, we'll hear from some of his collaborators about what it takes to survive in the high-pressure Canadian cannabis industry, where teamwork can mean the difference between winning and losing. It turns out there might be a few similarities between competing in extreme sports and playing this game called cannabis. I'm Don Schaefer.
I'm Ross Rebagliati, and this is the Potcast.
This episode was inspired by the Black Diamond Stick by Ross's Gold. Infuse your joint or pre-roll with extra THC, without it clogging or canoeing like other infused pre-rolls. Just insert the Black Diamond Stick in the middle of your joint or pre-roll, spark it, and you're good to go. Ask your favorite bud tender for the Black Diamond Stick by Ross's Gold, or visit herbaldispatch.com. Must be 19 plus. And now for the pot news. Pre-rolls have exploded in popularity among Canadian consumers in recent years. At the end of 2023, Headset reported pre-roll sales had come in at a close second behind flower, the king of all categories. In fact, pre-roll sales in Canada grew 36.5% compared to the previous year, vastly outperforming other categories, and even beating U.S. pre-roll sales, which only grew by 13.4%, and they're showing no signs of slowing down. So, what do Canadians love about pre-rolls? It could have something to do with their convenience factor. You can grab a ready-to-spark pre-roll joint and go without having to take time to grind up your flower or reveal your embarrassing rolling skills. You won't see me attempting to roll a joint anytime soon. It can also be easier on the wallet to grab a pack of pre-rolls instead of a package of flower. Another notable trend in Canada is the increase in micro versus standard cannabis cultivation licenses being issued. According to MJ Biz Daily, the issuance of standard cannabis cultivation licenses peaked in Canada in 2020 amid massive overproduction and destruction of unsold cannabis. In other words, the big guys were producing way too much weed, and it was getting stale. Issuance of micro licenses has steadily been outpacing standard licenses ever since. Smaller operations are not only less expensive to run, but their products are becoming more popular, reflecting consumer desire for more artisanal offerings. Microclass licenses allow cultivation within a surface area of up to 200 square meters, compared to the limitless standard license. The smaller scale of a micro operation allows greater focus on craft growing practices, with smaller producers building a reputation for cultivating better quality weed. After his Olympic controversy in 1998, Ross Rebagliati quickly became a cannabis icon, not only for being known as the first person to win gold in Olympic snowboarding, despite a positive cannabis test, but also for helping to normalize cannabis use, something that was still largely considered taboo at the time. With his newfound fame and the positive cannabis conversations he was sparking, Ross had visions of riding that wave into a pile of green gold.
I kind of had the premonition at the time, like, if this ever goes legal, this could potentially be an opportunity for me. Cannabis had kind of gotten to the point where medical cannabis was part of the spectrum. California had just legalized for medical purposes, and we were looking at a similar model in Canada, and it just seemed like it was inevitable, that we were smashing stereotypes and stigmas with, of course, my first place result at the Olympics and testing positive for cannabis at the same time. It did create a conversation, a national conversation, maybe even international conversation around cannabis.
Unfortunately for Ross, that conversation led to some challenges. Being a known Schedule I substance user meant snowboarding sponsors were hesitant to work with him, and traveling to international competitions was no longer an option. With his snowboarding career effectively over and legalization still a pipe dream, Ross found himself struggling to make ends meet. The very stigma Ross was trying to smash would follow him for many more years.
12 years ago, my wife and I were bringing our baby daughter, Rosie, down to California to meet my mom for the first time. She was a newborn. And we got turned around at the border for my past history of being a known person that used cannabis. Yeah, it was a bit of a trauma for us to have gone through planning the trip and packing up the car and got the dog and the baby, and we're going to drive down there. And to get turned around was upsetting to my wife, Allie, of course, and for me to have to deal with this ongoing saga of prohibition and stigma and the whole illegality of it. It just kind of started wearing me out at that point.
But just like an Olympic snowboarder faced with challenging terrain, these obstacles would end up lighting a fire inside Ross to double down and go for the gold.
Everything that I would have wanted to protect, as far as my personal life and my business opportunities moving forward, seemed to have evaporated, and I had nothing to lose at this point by diving headfirst into the cannabis industry. And so that's what I did. In 2012, we papered up Ross Gold, and we kind of kept it simple at the time. We just did glass. We had around 100 or more pieces of different kinds of pipes and bongs and dab rigs and other things like that right across the country. As we moved closer and closer to legalization, by around 2017, we had a Ross Gold store in Kelowna that we opened during Prohibition. And at that point, I was really putting my neck out on the line, not only for myself and what potential future I was going to have, but also for the industry.
Ross was taking a big risk, launching a brand and opening a business before legalization. But it was in line with his mission to normalize cannabis, and he wanted to make a meaningful mark.
I didn't want to be jumping on the bandwagon after legalization. I wanted to be part of the movement, and so that's why we had the store. At first it was the glass, and then we had the store with the glass in the store, and we had 30 different strains and all the extracts to go with each strain. And we had some of the bigger players that were brands at the time, pre-legalization. And yeah, we just kind of went for it. And we had the city council through the store, we had the police chief, we had the fire chief, going through all the motions if there was anything else we needed, and to show city council what we thought the future of cannabis was going to look like. And we were open for a couple of years with no issues.
Ross's celebrity status certainly played a role in the success of his store. Ian Hannah-Mansing even paid a visit just before legalization, and he interviewed Ross for a feature on CBC's The National.
We were actively searching for the most exposure we could get, just to get the traction that we were looking for as a brand and position ourselves, as serious players in the industry, which at the time was quite exciting.
Rebagliati says soon after the federal government legalizes the drug, he and his investors will have stores across the country.
We have all our ducks in a row, and basically it's my job to go skiing every day and create content for social media and be the face behind Ross's Gold.
Instead of following through with those plans, Ross and his partners ended up taking a step back, closing the store, and seeing how this whole legalization thing would play out before jumping back in.
We basically ceased to exist for a couple of years during the legalization process. Turns out that we waited 5 years after legalization to reemerge back into the industry once we kind of learned how the industry was going to work and where the goalposts were.
After some consideration, Ross decided to go full steam ahead and launch his Ross's Gold brand in the legal market. He could team up with folks growing great weed and attach his strong brand story to it without the overhead of having his own growing operation.
From the very beginning, we never wanted to be a licensed producer. Ross Gold was always meant to be a branding and licensing company. We always set out to build the brand and to get the brand traction, just like any industry has its brands. I like to use the analogy of Kellogg's cornflakes. Good old Kellogg's, they don't own the farm, okay? They buy from the farmers, they buy from the distributors of whatever grains they need to make their cereals, and then they process it. And so we always felt like that was the more successful model with the least amount of overhead. Also, at the time, you needed to have full staff, 7-figure facility, and still wait for 1 or more years to get your license and have everyone on payroll for that whole entire time. And there's only a couple of ways to finance something like that, which I didn't have either of those. I finally figured out a way where I could emerge as a brand in the industry. Yeah, so around 2.5 years ago, we got our first SKUs in the dispensaries, and yeah, that was a big moment for me and for my family, but also for me because we had gone through a lot since '98. And it was 25 years to the day, actually. Completely unplanned, but on February 8th, 25 years after Nagano, and this was 2.5 years ago, we hit the stores to the day that I won the gold medal. And that was crazy. So it was very serendipitous.
Being successful in the game of cannabis could be compared to any sport. Everyone brings their own unique skills to the table, and it really is teamwork that makes the dream work. In the beginning, Ross was just a guy with a brand and a vision for bringing great weed to market. In order to get ahead without a lot of investment capital, Ross would need to assemble a team of collaborators. Just like Team Canada had Ross's back through all of his tribulations in Nagano, the people he chose to partner with in his new life as a cannabis entrepreneur would hopefully do the same. The first order of business would be to find farmers who shared his passion for premium cannabis, the ones growing weed worthy of Ross's Gold brand. Farmers like Red from Papa Joe's Organics.
We are a local organic cannabis farm located in Sooke on the southern tip of Vancouver Island. We're out here just trying to produce local craft organic cannabis products at a price point for everyone, really. We primarily focus on living soil. So we have a hybrid greenhouse. So we use the sun during the summer months and we supplement light in the fall, winter, spring. Everything is done in a no-till system, all organic inputs. Sustainability, really, that's Papa Joe's motto. I met Ross through a mutual friend, actually, just being out in the cannabis community at an event one time, smoking a joint in the smoke pit. That's how it all came together. Ross was starting his brand. We were just launching Papa Joe's. We were looking for another way to get our brand out there and get some more recognition. So we decided to jump on board with the Ross's Gold brand, just because Ross is a legend in his own right. He's a cannabis activist. He's been doing it a long time, and it felt good to partner with someone like Ross just to get some brand awareness for us, and then obviously help promote his brand as well.
For Ross and Red, partnering on one particular Papa Joe's cultivar was a no-brainer.
We grew this cultivar and we had a name for it. It was Mango Gold. And Ross is like, well, I got the Ross's Gold brand and you got the organic Mango Gold. It's really fitting. He's like, and I really enjoy smoking sativas, and this is the sativa brand, and it was really high in terpenoline. Let's try it. Let's see how it goes. And we gave him a few joints and he was like, hey, this is really good, you guys. It's super uplifting. He likes to get out there and he stays active. And he was just saying that this weed was really good for an active lifestyle. And it was something that he was into promoting. And so it just worked out for both of us.
These guys are legacy growers, just good old boys from the island. And we connected through a number of people who I came to know over the years. And it's all about that connection and that personal relationship we feel like we need to have with the growers and the product that they grow. So Red and the crew at Papa Joe's were one of our first suppliers for Ross Gold. We've got the organic Mango Gold, which has been a bestseller, sativa-oriented. It literally smells like mangoes when you open the package. It's an incredible amount of terpenes. And we just launched a new flavor with Papa Joe's called Seventh Heaven that we're really excited about as well.
What does Ross look for when selecting cultivars to release under the Ross's Gold brand?
Well, for me, it's all about the burn. Of course, having the good COAs and high THC numbers and high terp counts are great. Ross Gold focuses primarily on the terpenes. So for example, our latest drop of organic Mango Gold from Papa Joe's tested over 6% terps, which is quite astonishing. But aside from the numbers, for me, it's all about the burn, to make sure that the customer has a great experience consuming the product, regardless of what the terp count is and what the THC numbers look like, that the joint itself actually burns clean, it doesn't go out, you got a nice white ash, and that it's smooth. And those are basically the three indicators for me when I'm testing product. The most important thing is that whatever price point you're at, you're getting that clean white ash with the nice burn, and that's our benchmark. That's the gold standard, if you will.
Beyond bonding over their passion for smooth-burning, tasty cultivars, for folks like Red and Ross, these kinds of collaborations help everyone gain more traction in the marketplace.
They have a licensing deal with us, so they're actively promoting the Ross Gold brand as well as producing for Ross Gold. And then what I've always done with our suppliers is promote their brand. So Papa Joe's has a number of SKUs on the BCLDB and some on direct delivery that they're actively supplying, their own brand to the market. And so that's part of the relationship that we have, is that cross promotion of Ross Gold and Papa Joe's.
Collaborations are very important, I think, even for someone like ourselves. That's why we work with Ross. You got to have strength in numbers. The more people that you have, you get farther outreach. There's Ross's followers, and then we have our followers, and then you put the two followers together and you create a bigger following. And I think it just helps with distribution. We grow the cannabis. He puts it out there for us on social media. So yeah, it's a win-win. If you can work together and the stars align, it can be a great business relationship.
Ross had a killer brand story and passionate growing partners with legacy experience and a great product. That should have been enough to be successful, right? In the Canadian cannabis industry, where everyone is still learning what it takes to make a profit, it's not that simple. And Ross's brand isn't quite there yet.
Managing the brand has been fun and exciting, and also a challenge. There's been ups and downs with regards to that. Small victories and big losses so far are kind of the theme of having a cannabis brand right now.
Fortunately, the stars would align once again for Ross with another great business relationship, this time with a collaborator working in another essential part of a complete cannabis operation, processing.
My name is Fabrizio Rossi. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Trygg Collective. And Trygg Collective is basically a processor and owner of Trygg Collection brands in the cannabis business. So we specialize on pre-rolls, in a straight cigarette style pre-rolls, so the next generation pre-rolls. And we've been around since 2022. I met Ross early days of Trygg. We got connected through another person, and Ross wanted to launch Ross Gold. First of all, I was like, wow, Ross Rebagliati, are you kidding me? Like, I remember that. I remember, the Olympics. I remember the whole story, right? It was wild. And then to kind of talk to him, I was so excited. He has a personal brand. He actually mentioned to me, I'm not a celebrity. I'm actually part of the industry. I was built on this. Every 6 months or a year, we kind of touch bases. And I kept seeing his brand in the marketplace. And then lately, we reconnected because we moved our business to Kelowna. And of course, Ross is in the BC Interiors.
Fab and I are good buddies. We go back a couple of years. Right before we launched Ross Gold, we had a couple of meetings about them potentially being our processor. For one reason or another, we ended up going with a different processor, but over time, we really liked the straight pre-rolls that Trygg does. That was a big thing for me to differentiate our brand from the other brands, was to go with a straight roll instead of a cone. Personally, I like the straight rolls. The cone, you get a large cherry at the top that kind of burns extra hot, and then it kind of pinches and cones down to a smaller, narrower point, which often gets clogged up by the end of the joint. And so you're getting an inconsistent experience as opposed to the straight rolls, where you have that same size cherry from top to bottom that burns the same from end to end. We get that perfect, smoother experience. Yeah, it just turned out at the end of the day that Fabrizio and I were both kind of looking at doing the same thing.
After reconnecting, it became clear that a pre-roll collaboration was in their future. But Fabrizio ended up coming through for Ross in a different way, and at a time when he needed it most. Ross scored a position as full-time lead pre-roll technician at Trygg, where he's getting his hands dirty, becoming an expert at operating high-tech pre-roll machines and essentially running their whole pre-roll operation, something you probably never imagined doing back when he was puffing joints with Mick Jagger.
Yeah, I've been burning the candle at both ends with the family and with a full-time job as head pre-roll technician. Whoever thought that would be a job? Yeah, we got our sleeves rolled up and we're up to our elbows into the cannabis industry one way or another. And for me, the Trygg position that I have there is beneficial on not only earning a monthly paycheck to support the family while we get the brand going and off the ground, but also offers opportunities for us to produce and process for Ross Gold right out of Trygg, and having access to those machines. These are all just the little corners that you have to cut as a brand in the cannabis industry these days. How are you going to leverage your brand? How are you going to get it out there? The profit margins are so slim. It's basically been an exercise in marketing.
At Trygg, Ross is learning how to produce one of the fastest growing product categories in cannabis, while opening the doors to releasing even more innovative pre-roll products under the Ross's Gold brand.
So we connected very quickly and we knew each other, and we decided for him to kind of be part of our team at Trygg, but also bigger than that is like, how can we bring Ross Gold's brand to the next stage and but work together towards that common goal, right? As a processor, a producer, you can create one brand, but one brand is like one horse in the race. Ross has a brand already. So we can produce his pre-rolls for him and create several different brands and sub-brands for him. So we're really excited about that. We're talking about doing 10 packs, 3 packs, 5 packs, multi-packs, right? And then we can create the brand in a bigger scale. And then also, Ross brings what I don't have. I have smoked weed. I smoke once in a while, but I wouldn't call myself a connoisseur. Ross knows weed, knows the brand. He's passionate about it, and goes back to that, both things, right? Having Ross in the team, it gives me another vision to the industry that I don't have. So we're pretty excited with that.
Over the years since legalization, it's clear that Ross and his peers have realized that success in this business is not so much about competing, but focusing on winning together.
Yeah, the collaborations, I think, is where the industry needs to be. I think we're stronger together.
If we can work together and band together, especially the craft producers and the micro craft producers, that's where we need to be as more of a collective. And that fits perfectly in with Trygg, the Trygg Collective. Part of the ecosystem of cannabis is basically your connections and the people that you know and work with to move the product. And legalization didn't really change that. We still need to move the product, and we still, need those connections to make that happen more efficiently.
You cannot do everything. You cannot be good at everything, right? I always say I have key partners. I don't have packaging issues. I have Kevin Lee from ND Supplies. That collaboration, not just with the cultivators, but with the packaging team, with the insurance provider, everybody, you have to have some kind of collaboration in an ecosystem that makes it key, because at the same time, economics, sometimes things will go wrong. So if you have a packaging partner or a cultivator or a processor, right, that you sometimes the bills will be delayed, right? Pick up the phone, talk to that partner. I have got calls that, hey, I know that you were supposed to collect that money in a month from now, but I can't make payroll. Do you have anything you can help me out? Sure, actually, I have some money that I can send it to you in advance. And having those conversations, helping each other out. What do you need? We purchased a second piece of equipment from another processor, and my partner ended up leaving our business about a year ago. So it was kind of like that adjustment of finances as he was leaving and I was taking over, and money was tight. I had to pick up the phone, and I basically told him, because we have a monthly payment, I had to pick up the phone and say, hey, just so you know, I can't pay you this month. I'm willing to give you your equipment back. And the first thing he said, he goes, Fab, how are you? And I go, I'm okay. He goes, no, really, how are you? Are you okay? Are you good? What do you need? And I'm like, the only thing that I need right now is like, can I skip a payment this week? He goes, don't even worry about that. People understand and care. We all know that we live in glass houses. I think that has been my theme for the cannabis industry in the last year and a half, is that collaboration with key people, right? We're all in this together. All of us are in this together for the long term. I wouldn't be in this business to this day. My business wouldn't exist if I wouldn't have the collaboration of my ecosystem from cultivators to packaging to retailers to everything.
It seems that everyone who's been crazy enough to put their heart and soul into this business has been through a lot since 2017. Ross likens it to an extreme sport, and we'll take his word for it.
There are parallels between competing at the Olympics or in any extreme sport and being part of the cannabis industry. I'll tell you that for a fact. Yeah, no, it's been an up and down industry to be in. Lots of perceived successes and definitely a lot of actual failures. And I think that kind of speaks volumes as it pertains to sport. I always say winning is a losing game. Like, you have to lose a lot of races before you start to win, even if you're at the top of your game. And I feel like in the cannabis industry, it's no different. We are all going through this together. And so, yeah, we've got that whole go for glory, go for gold in the cannabis industry. And, everyone's got visions of grandeur. And just like a professional athlete, wants to be the best in the world. And the whole progression of cannabis and where the goalposts keep aligning themselves and where they're going to move to next is what everybody is sort of keeping their eye on. And the same in sport, like, what's the new gear going to be like? Are we going to be able to go faster with the new technology and so forth? So yeah, it's very similar to pro sports and extreme sports. There's all those things that you can do, like in sport and in the cannabis industry, to sort of foresee these issues ahead of time, but there's always something that you don't expect that's around the next corner. So it's kind of always being ready for that hard turn that you're going to need to make.
Thanks to Red from Papa Joe's Organics, Fabrizio from Trygg Collective, and of course Ross for showing us what true passion, dedication, and teamwork is all about. Be sure to look for their products at your local retailer and support the blood, sweat, and tears that go into producing our beloved BC Bud and pre-rolls. This episode was inspired by the Black Diamond Stick by Ross's Gold, the easy way to infuse your joint or pre-roll with extra THC. Ask your favorite bud tender for it or visit herbaldispatch.com. Must be 19 plus. Join us for the next episode of the Potcast, where we'll be exploring the relationship between cannabis and sex. You don't want to miss this one. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and keep us in your rotation. The Potcast with Ross Rebagliati is an Everything Podcast production. The opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the podcast team or our partners. The show is intended for a 19-plus audience. Thanks to our host, Ross Rebagliati, showrunner is Rathu Jagannath, our writer is Jessica Graychick, and our sound engineer is John Massacre. I'm Don Schaefer. Thanks for listening to Potcast, another Everything Podcast production. Visit everythingpodcast.com, a division of Pattison Media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast.